And I'm now going to bring this executive meeting for United Paramount Network to order. Our first item of business we have is the puzzling success we've been seeing on this Star Trek Voyager TV show. Despite our best efforts, it would seem as though our viewership is climbing. Now, as I'm sure you are all aware, it has been our goal to produce some of the most garbage television out there and undermine this entire network's goal and make sure we are unemployed by the end of the quarter. Yet that simply is not happening. Gentlemen, what are we going to do?
Listen, I can only make one Homeboys in Outer Space at a time. Only one at a time. I can't handle the stress. We've got to find a way to tank this Voyager show. There's still 10 million people watching it every week. Did you see our season finale? We had it be some dopey friendship thing that happened with a guy who can't show emotion. And people still watched it.
Yes, very puzzling. It was quite the genius move, taking middle season filler crap and plugging it in as our season finale. Again, we know the right things to do, gentlemen. We saw best of both worlds. We have experienced Star Trek producers and staff. We have done our best to undermine, and yet these numbers are not lying. What could we possibly do to drive viewers away?
Oh, I got it. You know, those writers, they had those two different episode ideas. One that was that horrible, cracky fan fiction thing where they'd run into Amelia Earhart in space. And then that other one that seemed like a sort of a good idea, that they meet this other colony or civilization of humans from people that were abducted. Why don't we make a season premiere that combines the two and does neither well?
You are a genius. Let's do it, boys. Let's run the worst season opener we can.
Yeah, we can do it! And then let's go do some coke off a bunch of hookers' assholes!
And we're back. Season 2. Voyager, please. A hateful voyage through the Delta Quadrant. I'm your host, Peter.
And I'm your co-host, Joseph. Thanks for continuing to tune in with us here, folks. We are delighted to have you as part of our adventure, because without you, we would be suffering alone. And that would be horrific.
Yeah, that is the true nature of this podcast, was that I wanted to watch... Joe wanted me to watch Voyager, and I refused to suffer alone because my deep appreciation of Schadenfreude. We devised a whole podcast around dragging as many other people into this miserable trek as possible. So thanks for coming back and joining us on Season 2 as we see where things could possibly go from here. As our little our intro alluded to, we did not end Season 1 on the strongest of notes. And I want to circle back around to something. TNG's long gone at this point, man. And what season are we in on Deep Space Nine?
We would be going into what I would call the heart of DS9, because it would be in Season 4 by now. So this is when that show got good. This is when Worf came on. This is when everything started to heat up. They had the long-term Klingon turned into a war eventually, and then it transitioned to the Dominion. So... you know, good Trek is being made at this time.
Yeah, I mean, they've got great Trek under their belt. All good things happen. You know what good Star Trek is. And it's not this stuff. This writing room is bonkers to me. I don't know where to start on this one, man. I think we just need to jump in. Season 2, Episode 1, The 37s.
So, I do love that the very first...
No, I had to cut you off. I'm sorry. I watched this episode yesterday, May 2nd, 2018. Joe, do you know what that is?
If I recall correctly, my dear friend Peter, that would have been your birthday.
My fucking 36th birthday, dude. And your present to me was... I know we said we're going to wait to the end before we really put our feelings out there, but in case you're not feeling what I'm putting down, this is probably the stupidest fucking episode of Star Trek I've ever seen. And I spent my 36th birthday watching this goddamn thing. My wife went to bed. I fell so down the rabbit hole on this thing. It's crazy. I'm like, I read all the memory alpha. I'm reading Wikipedia's. Like, it's mind-boggling me. This episode was a leftover from season 1. This was supposed to be the season 1 season finale, if you can believe that. And it wasn't Paramount, or it wasn't the Star Trek producers who wanted to hold off. It was UPN that ran these fucking things in this goofy order. They loved it. Like Branagh or whatever, he calls this thing rip-roaring fun. Like, I almost went blind from watching this thing.
It is one of the most baffling things I've ever seen. I remembered it extremely well, so rewatching it was kind of a hoot.
I'm sorry that you had to bear this emotional scar for so long and were not able to gift yourself with forgetfulness. It's
just so shockingly weird. I mean, it's that they made this was a thing that they put out, and they were like, "Yes, we nailed it. This is good. Good job. We did great." Like, are you fucking real right now? Like,
rip-roaring fun. That's an exact quote from the writer. All right, so Voyager's cruising along, going home like they're supposed to, when they find spaced rust, and they decide to stop everything and follow space rust the other way.
It has all of the classic Star Trek convenience tropes, though. Okay, so not only do they find a rust in space, it just so happens that they also identify this chemical compound as gasoline, because Tom Paris just so happens to be into 20th century automobiles. Because fucking of course
Mary
he is.
Sue of him. He's like a rapier Wesley Crusher. Convict Crusher.
Slightly.
Convict Crusher. That'll be it. The more he pulls this Mary Sue stuff, that Convict Crusher.
And sure enough, they very swiftly find a piece of Ford clip art floating in the star field right there in the view screen before they cut to the credits.
I thought that this whack-ass truck floating stagnantly in space was going to be the worst CG I saw this episode. I was wrong.
You were. You were tragically wrong.
Mm-hmm. So they pull this piece of shit on. They put it in the one of the cargo bays, and they're looking at it like they're looking at, I don't know, like the black monolith from 2001 Space Odyssey. Like, nobody can wrap their head around what this thing is. Fucking Tuvok's in there with a phaser, right? And everybody's just scratching their head, and Harry Kim ignorantly is like, "Oh, is this a hover car?" Like, dude, you guys are astronauts, essentially. Okay? Are you really that stupid? 1961
Whoa. Dude. It's worse than you're saying. Because they know exactly what it is, because Tom Paris knows the make and model and manufacturing year from memory.
It's a 1936 Ford, actually.
Mr. Paris?
That was the manufacturing date, 1936. Ford was the name of the company that built it. Antique vehicles are a hobby of mine.
It's like, oh yeah, it's a 36 Ford. It's got this crankshaft, it's got a piston engine, it's great, it's super awesome. Like, he lays it out for everybody. He's like, oh Harry, you're just so dumb. You don't know what this is. This is a Ford. It's like, really, dude knows all about, like, cars that from his perspective would be like 400 years old. Just, he knows it all. That's what he knows. Okay.
Well, Kim doesn't. Kim, thinks this thing's a hover car, and that somehow predates man's first adventure into space, let alone Cochrane and all that other stuff. Like, it's just one of those real painful 90s head scratcher moments. Like, who are you trying to pander to here? Like, this is just fast forward this scene.
My favorite part of it is where Tom goes, now I have to find something they called a key as part of his little monologue about starting the car.
No, that's a fair point. We have not seen any doors that lock on Voyager up to this point. It's entirely possible that the concept of a key and a lock is just too alien to these guys.
That's the part you're okay with. All right. It's your birthday. I'll let you get away with it.
So, skip forward, you got some gunshots coming off the tailpipe that everybody reactively ducks for. You know, nobody knows what a truck is, but everybody knows a gunshot sounds like. Luckily, the truck starts off with zero problems. 400-year-old truck that's been sitting in space, and this thing just starts right up. Luckily, because then you can turn on the AM radio and pick up a Morse distress code, an SOS, which they proceed to follow. Everybody's like scratching their head as to like what SOS is, and I'm pretty sure like every other Star Trek franchise has had some sort of like bang on the wall SOS moment, haven't they?
I think that actually showed up in the original series. For I have a strong memory of some Kirk adventure involving the actual use of Morse code. I don't know if it ever wound up in TNG anywhere. I would think that those simple to send message, you know, that that's actually something I think would still exist in the 24th century.
When you're in a hermetic environment and you could have potentially, you know, a vacuum of space on the other side and looking for survivors in a space disaster, yeah, I think banging on a bulkhead with a space wrench SOS would be pretty helpful for that search and rescue.
Yeah, I don't buy that that's something that none of them is familiar with. That, like, Tom Paris knows what a 36 Ford pickup looks like, but he doesn't know what fucking SOS is? Oh, okay. Yeah.
So speaking of what else Tom Paris knows, Janeway decides to wildly divert off of course. And how does this thing not look like a fucking trap, for starters? Like, you're out there in the middle of the Delta Quadrant and you find some piece of Earth history that just so happens to be right in the flight path of the Earth ship going in. Like, you're following breadcrumbs back to Baba Yaga's house? Like, what the fuck, man?
Hey, who is our captain? The Trap Queen. So, of course it's a trap. And this time we're going to double down. We're not going to beam into the trap. We're not going to send a shuttlecraft down to spring the trap. No. No, boy. We're going to take the whole ship down. We're going to call Blue Alert, and we're going to see Voyager actually land on a planet. Now, the idea of a starship being able to land on a planet is a neat idea, independent of all of the other stuff that's going on in here. But boy, did they phone it in on the CG.
Jesus Christ. It looked like some old terrible ass video game cutscene, like super low budget LucasArts. Like, there's the good LucasArts CG games, like TIE Fighter and like Dark Forces, and this is like, I can't even think of what the worst. This is probably still too bad. Even
this is more Night Trap. That's not even LucasArts. It's like some shit on the Sega CD.
This is something off that, what was it? What was the Philips one? The CDI? Was it?
Yes, the Philips CDI.
This looks terrible. This made the truck floating around in space look really, really good. And they land the ship, and I agree with you. I think that the concept that Voyager could land would have been really excellent had they sustained like major damage and had to land for repairs or anything other than like, you're already out in the middle of nowhere for a real flimsy reason. Now you're going to really expose the ship to some shit, but whatever, they land it. One of my favorite things in Star Trek is when you get to see the real scale of a starship by putting a human being somewhere on it, like walking around the deck. I thought that was one of the coolest things in First Contact when they're walking around by the main deflector dish. Something about the way they positioned Voyager on this planet's surface and the people, like, it seemed really small.
Yeah, I don't know what was up with the perspective on that shot, but it was jarringly strange because they were trying to establish the size of the ship, and I believe they were attempting to try to establish it as being massive. And it's way out in the distance. They're trying to give it like perspective, and that they have come up, and like if they were standing closer to it, it would just dwarf them, right? That seemed like what they were going for, but how they had the ship pasted in there, it just seemed like off. I don't know how else to describe it. It looked like a painted backdrop, which I don't think is what they wanted to do. One dependable trope, though. What does this planet look like?
Southern California?
Southern fucking California!
Which I didn't understand, because they said it was an L-class planet. M-class is like your standard Earth. I don't really know off the top of my head what an L-class is, but it was like, there's weird space radiation that prevented I would assume prevented some sort of like scanning, because you later come to find out there's 3 fucking cities on this planet that they never seemed aware of.
The L class planets are supposed to be marginally habitable. That's for what I remember from, forget if it was like a technical manual or something like that. I remember like looking at like all the different classifications, and L class is marginally habitable. So planets that like Vulcan, I think is L class because it's volcanic and kind of shitty, but you can still live there. So that's what this is supposed to be. But instead, of course, because Star Trek is anything, it's budget conscious, and all of their planets look like the same fucking park in Southern California. This looks like exactly where they've shot like 3 other exterior scenes.
So this L-class planet is lush and beautiful with a very warm climate. So apparently away team is not an away team if your ship is already on the surface. Then it's just, unload all of your senior officers with no fucks to give. Janeway just walks out the door, and she's out there with what, Tuvok and Chakotay?
Yeah, and she I mean, it's basically all of the main characters are out in force. Like the entire senior staff is on this little adventure. Janeway and Kim and I want to say Paris break off as a trio and to locate the signal, while Chakotay and Torres and Randos seek out substance that is blocking their ability to scan on the surface.
Okay, so there is some sort of sensor inhibitor then that would have prevented them from seeing these colonies. I got a couple thoughts at this point. One, I feel like UPN made the decision to have this be the season opener because they thought it was just so fucking cool that the ship landed. It's kind of a landmark occasion. It's the first time you ever see a Star Trek hero vessel land on a planet. Maybe, I don't know, maybe back in 1990, whatever, maybe this did look sweet. Obviously it hasn't hold up, but maybe for the time it looked cool, and they're like, wow, this is really great, and we want to wow people with our season opener we're going to put there. I think there's kind of a missed opportunity here. You got the ship on the ground. I would have liked to see like some cool Starfleet vehicles, She says they're 2 kilometers away from whatever their target is, and they just hoof it on foot.
So this is 1995 is when this episode comes out, middle of 1995. Just as by perspective, this is definitely like in between seasons 3 and 4 of DS9. DS9 had remarkably better effects when they did their season premiere for season 4, Way of the Warrior. They had the big fight with the station against a Klingon armada. So it's not like Star Trek isn't doing good things with their effects at the exact same time. I agree that the idea of the ship landing is cool. Totally agree. And I think there's all kinds of missed opportunities in this episode. From we don't see any land vehicles, we don't see any atmospheric vehicles, to, well, shit, we don't even see these like this fucking civilization that is built on this planet, which I'm sure we'll get to.
With a knife.
I have no doubt. So yeah, you've missed opportunities, but this entire episode is just one unfortunate choice after another. I think there's 2 things they got right in this episode. One, the idea of having the ship land on a planet. Not the execution, the idea. And then 2, the person they got to play Amelia Earhart. Not that they used Amelia Earhart, but the actor they got to play her. That's the only things I'm going to say they did correctly.
So they're down, and they go wandering away from the ship on foot, and they come across an old propeller plane. And again, it's more the truck treatment. I'm standing around slack-jawed wondering what the hell this thing is. They get on. They find, this distress signal that had been broadcasting on AM frequencies. Plane's still in great shape. Apparently, these L-class planets have no aging effects on metal structures, so this thing's just perfectly preserved as well. And it's got some weird alien cell phone USB battery pack charger that's keeping this radio running. So Janeway pops off some orders and says she's going to go wander off alone and find the other away team who had gone off to look for a cave.
And they found that cave. Chakotay radios back, says, "Hey, we found where this jamming shit is coming from. We're gonna go pop in real quick and see what's going on." And Janeway gives them permission, and sure enough, when they all roll down into this cave, they find a clearly redressed DS9 set.
Let me tell you what, I was so hyped when I saw them start moving around. I really thought I was going to get to see our old friend Cardassian Hallway.
Oh, I was waiting for him too, man. I was expecting it.
I was genuinely crushed when they didn't. I'm like, of all the times to bust out Cardassian Hallway, you're not going to have it play into this very clearly Cardassian set, man. But it is what it is, I guess.
Lost opportunities for potential Cardassian Hallway canon, but it's all right. We get basically a redress of the prison area from Faces instead, and they see they've got these tubes, these cryo tubes, and they've got people in them.
They're not even the cryo tubes. I couldn't help but shake it looked like a fucking like a supermarket frozen food section, like the doors behind the people. Like eventually someone goes and puts their hand and like rubs and you see a person's face behind there. I thought you were going to see like some winter medley or California medley, you know, frozen vegetables in a bag on a wire rack in that thing. It was a terrible set, really.
Here's the thing. Apparently this alien race that was responsible for all this, their cryo freezing was bathing people in blue light. Because that's the extent of the effect that they go with. They got that glass and it's got that frosted over effect like the supermarket, like you said. And when they eventually open them up, their frozenness is that they're bathed in a blue spotlight while they're under there.
Let me hit you with some real talk here.
Okay.
Let's pull ourselves out of this garbage episode and look at some bigger picture stuff. They find these humans, you know, very clearly humans, and they can tell by Japanese military uniform on one of the guy and some other context clues here. I would assume primarily that 36 Ford that had been floating in space. That, you know, these are humans that had been kidnapped from Earth. At no point do they discuss, like, this is ridiculous, maybe this is a trap, and, you know, maybe we're all in some sort of weird magic space creatures mind puzzle or something. You know, they're taking all this at face value, but Janeway starts pumping the brakes on, you know, maybe we shouldn't wake these people up. They fall back to Voyager, and they have a senior staff meeting talking about possibility.
Dude, you just skipped over the grand revelation moment.
And what a grand revelation is. Someone who would later on in the episode, you know, profess herself to be the biggest Amelia Earhart fan ever. Janeway's rubbing on one of these frozen food coolers, and she sees someone in there who is I don't know why she's wearing a name tag, but whatever. You got Amelia Earhart in there. Janeway's like spelling out the last name, like mispronouncing it. It takes her like 2 minutes to figure out that's Amelia Earhart. For being her big, you know, the president of her fan club, like, you've never seen her name in print before?
It's the goofiness with which, I mean, obviously not a surprise, right? Everyone knows about the Amelia Earhart. Even if you've never watched Voyager ever, if you're aware of Voyager, you probably know about the episode they decide to use Amelia Earhart as a character. Not like from like the way that TOS did historic characters in The Savage Curtain, where it was all a fucking alien space baby dream. No, this is actually supposed to be the for realsy Amelia Earhart of this universe is in the show, like for real. Played by the same lady who played Spikowitz's DA wife in NYPD Blue, by the way. I don't know if you remember
I don't know who that is. No, I don't watch NYPD Blue.
Shannon Lawrence, yeah. It was probably the first big name like a guest star they've had on the show, as far as like mid-90s TV big name. She was a big deal then.
Well, what she came off as once they ended up warming up, and I want to jump too far ahead, but did you see that SNL sketch with the abduction lady? Like three people got abducted.
Of course.
Two of them had really great, wonderful experiences, and the other one like basically became like the white trash pig party.
It's one of the famously awesome SNL sketches because no one can keep their shit together.
Yeah, well, that's the vibe I'm getting off this Amelia Earhart. But anyway, so they go back to the conference room, and you know, I saw it in Next Gen. I can't speak to any of the other franchises, but like I think it was the season finale for Next Gen, and maybe that's why they didn't do this one as an actual season finale. But the neutral zone, the Enterprise is flying off. It's basically the reemergence of the Romulans, and along the way they find the cryo satellite with a bunch of people who were terminally ill and had gone under cryogenic freezing, and like there's this resistance from Starfleet. They're like, whoa, we don't know if we want to get involved in this. It's like they're humans. The Federation represents humanity amongst all these other things. Why is there such an aversion to thawing out, you know, human captives or the sick or whatever?
I don't know if there's a real rational reason why not to wake them up, although they don't really spend much time contemplating not doing so. I mean, the conversation that they have in the briefing is just insane. Suddenly, they're 100% believing that they have somehow magically in the Delta Quadrant stumbled across the for real Amelia Earhart, right? They don't bat an eye at that prospect. There's never any doubt in their minds or narratively that that's not the real Amelia Earhart, which would be
You can tell it's the real Amelia Earhart because she's wearing a name tag.
Yeah, clearly.
You know?
Yeah, obviously.
She's a named NPC right off the bat. You can see it over the horizon. She's got that yellow name floating above her head, and what you see is what you get.
She's got that blue verification check. That is the for real Amelia Earhart.
They could have had like Genghis Khan in there. And he would have had his fucking name on there too. Like, anybody worth knowing in here has a name tag. You're good to go. That's your main character for the episode, and move along face value.
It's like Chakotay's like, well, I guess it is that she got abducted by aliens. All right, let's move on. Like, God, that's insane. It's insane right there. And they're like, all right, let's go wake them up and figure out what the fuck is going on, because they got here somehow, so clearly whatever got them here maybe can bring us home. So let's interrogate Amelia Earhart about why she's in the Delta Quadrant. That they just jump to that as quick as they possibly can. And they're like, oh, by the way, only humans or people who can pass for human are allowed to come on this adventure because we don't want to freak them out. Like, everything else...
Fair play, though.
Fair play, but, like, is everything else not supposed to freak them out? Like, having some aliens there might have, like, actually convinced them quicker that what you were saying is true. And it's not like you've got any, like, horrific aliens on board. It's not like there's, like, anyone who doesn't actually look human. I mean, B'Elanna just looks like she's, just really angry. And you got Shell, the Bolian, who just looks like he's a really big fan of a sports team as far as they know. Face painted, whatever.
I get CGI was still very expensive at this time, but I want to go ahead and throw props at the Orville for having some pretty dynamic crew members like Slime Guy and some of the other wilder aliens to, I think, kind of cash in the dream that Gene Roddenberry had for diversity and cool shit sitting on the bridge. So they go back to the frozen food section at their local Kroger, and they find out that you can't just release these people one at a time. That basically when you deactivate this cryo system, everybody is going to come out. But then also they have to administer some sort of drug via hypospray, and that's what actually wakes people up. And instead of doing the reasonable thing, which is, wake people up one at a time and process them slowly, they just start going buck wild with these hyposprays and just make sure that everybody is awake for like maximum crowd panic value.
Not that it matters, because only 4 of the people that get woken up ever have lines. Mm-hmm. And furthermore, they just kind of loiter around politely. Feel like there's only one of them that's an asshole.
we get to one of the first cool things I actually pulled out of this episode, and it was the Japanese dude talking. They actually call some attention to the fact that these universal translators are in play, and they kind of motion to like the comm badge. So, from what I've seen so far, the comm badge is housing this thing, and not only does it translate for the person wearing it, but apparently it creates like a free communication bubble around the system, and also perfectly lip sync you. So.
Yeah, and it seems to suggest that it's in the comm badge and generates a field, so that even if you're not wearing a badge, it works. Which I guess would presumably also kind of exist on the ship. Probably also has that function. So the universal translator has now become sort of auto-synchronous in all of your interactions, which. I will say I just watched finally the one piece of Trek I have not watched, Trek branded things, and I saw Star Trek Beyond. I had resisted watching it because I did not like the other JJ movies. I actually did. I thought Beyond was the closest thing to Star Trek they made out of those movies by far. And I really liked how they did the universal translator in that. You know how
Refresh me.
So when the alien comes to the space station and says that her shit got all fucked up, the way it works is it's on a delay. So she talks and then it translates what she says, but it's like a 1 second delay. So you see her talking in her alien language and then it's overdubbed by someone else's voice, like Siri, translating what she's saying. Like that seems like a more authentic way a universal translator would work. But obviously that takes time, effort, energy, and effects budget, in which none of that ever happens on Voyager. So that's out.
They thaw everybody out, and they start trying to, go after this Amelia Earhart angle. And what would you say her name was?
Shannon Lawrence. Shannon Lawrence.
I understand you getting excited to see her. And she's good to be your treat for this episode. My treat for the episode came by her co-pilot, her navigator. Do you recognize this guy?
God, what is his name?
Don't look it up. I'm asking. Do you recognize him?
I don't recognize him, no.
Motherfucking Tackleberry from Police Academy.
Hey! Tackleberry!
What?
Dude, that's straight up Tackleberry from Police Academy. Tackleberry in Police Academy was a guy who had like a million guns laying all over the place. And in a true continuation from one franchise into another, this fucking dude is packing heat too. And before long, he's got that 38 special. He's waving it around. None of the slowpoke Starfleet people can cross-draw their phaser quick enough to zap his dumb ass. So he takes everybody hostage, and they drag this scene out where they're standing around the frozen food section while Starfleet's trying to convince them all of the cockamamie premise of this episode. And just like me, the viewer, these cryogenically frozen people are just not buying what they're laying down.
Do you think that it's Starfleet protocol for everyone to give up their service nines at the first sign of trouble? Because they just allow themselves to be disarmed without any protest, and that seems like such a consistent trope.
Dude, there's zero procedure being followed anywhere. You got the captain wandering out on the planet's surface with the rest of the executive crew. There's some sort of advanced alien thing going on here. That they're taking humans captives. Like, there are so many red flags flying around on this thing. And now you're going to let everybody get tied up by Tackleberry with a fucking 38 revolver. Let them shoot you. Who gives a fuck? You got 5 people there with phasers. I would think at a certain point, they're going to have to sit down and be like, well, hey guys, apparently the fucking hologram is a necromancer and can bring any of us back alive. So this is going to revise how our tactics work. Whenever we're in a situation where shit might get bad or go to worse, let's just neutralize the situation. And anybody who might die in the process, we'll just, resurrect them. No big deal. And always be in control of every situation.
Hey, the EMH has standard post-mortem revival protocols. That was the exact phrasing. Standard post-mortem revival protocols. So we're good. As long as it's not a headshot, you're probably all right.
Even if you have a headshot, maybe it'll be fine. They can just hologram you a new brain. One of the many other baffling things about this episode, so like Amelia Earhart is in her Halloween costume in a bag aviator outfits of like, you know, a leather bomber jacket with a pin saying her own fucking name. Meanwhile, this other guy who was up in the plane with her at the same time is wearing like Tackleberry. He's wearing like a 3-piece suit. What?
I just love that you keep calling him Tackleberry, but
He is Tackleberry.
Awesome. That's a
And let's just round out things real quick. Who else can you recall in there? There's the very stereotypical. I don't. This farmer. I don't even want to touch the farmer guy. Honestly,
the stereotypical black sharecropper. You've got the stereotypical Imperial Japanese army officer. You've got Tackleberry, Halloween Amelia Earhart, and then the background extras are like a hobo, a random Indian lady.
Yeah.
Like, you don't really see them except in that one shot where they're like standing around like, I don't know, what do we do? Or in the future, I guess. It's just those four that talk. And like you said, they're not buying what Janeway's trying to sell them. And they go through this tortured scene where they have this insane conversation, and Janeway eventually like has a heart-to-heart where she explains that she has an Amelia Earhart fan club card and like appeals to how awesome she is to the future to get her to buy into it. Meanwhile, Chakotay has found out the captain is being held hostage by Tackleberry, and Smoldering Catcher Gear Guy and all of his pals have compression rifles, and they're going to go fuck some shit up.
How do I keep missing that this is Smoldering Umpire? Is it just without the vest I become like face blind to this guy?
I mean, he gets a good face shot too. Like the camera's centered on him.
Is it smoldering?
Oh, it's smoldering. He's got that look of determination. I can't believe he missed it.
I'm gonna have to rewatch it.
You need to check that scene out. He's the first one to get his gat. He's like, all right, follow me, men. Me, the smoldering catcher guy. We're gonna make shit happen. So eventually, they get out of the cave. Earhart takes the gun from Tackleberry, and they all decide to march out to get to the ship. And this is, of course...
Let me cut you off there. What does not happen at that point, where Janeway successfully negotiates an end to this hostage situation? What does she not do?
Tell Chakotay they're free.
I mean, really, like, you know, your fucking dudes are gonna be coming for all that could happen. Like, you could have like snipers up on the fucking ridges and be leading what has now become your new friends out into the open, where they're gonna get shot in the fucking heads, which coincidentally happens.
Yeah, so they come out, and there's these dudes in the world's best worst BDSM gear, these black latex, oven gear, which had to be the most uncomfortable shit imaginable to be wearing in the fucking SoCal heat. Yeah, it's just unfucking fortunate. Start shooting their like little pop guns at everybody.
I'm pretty sure those are Ferengi laser rifles. I remember from the old Playmates toys, I had the Ferengis, and I'm pretty sure that's what their rifles look like. So they get in a crossfire with the BDSM crew. Another interesting thing here, Tuvok, who had gone back to the ship and was leading the strike team to attack. Like, let me criticize the shit out of Tuvok here real quick. First of all, Tuvok and Chakotay, the guys in charge of this rescue party, they don't even have fucking rifles themselves. They're rolling around with the regular phasers. They know they're going into a hostile situation. I think they actually don't think like some sort of like, oh yeah, they detect the aliens, because the aliens are using some sort of like weird sensor suppressing technology, but they're able to actually catch them for a minute. So they know they're aliens out there too. Starfleet comes rolling over the hill, and everybody is like an arm's distance apart. Like, one good grenade would have wiped out this whole posse.
Yeah, I mean, it's standard Star Trek small arms fighting. I mean, okay, I'm about to say something slightly nice about something that isn't Star Trek but is branded such, Discovery. They did hand-to-hand small arms shit better. You guys had flak jackets. They seemed to follow combat logic in a much more realistic way. And obviously the action in television had caught up finally, such that in that show things were much better than what you see throughout all of Berman era Trek, which is dudes standing in clusters, impossibly slow fighting around corners using weapons that are supposed to travel at the speed of light but somehow don't. It's always dumb to watch, no matter what show it's on. The only good fight scene I've seen has been hand to hand. Was the fight scene with the Space Ghost Chakotay going from body to body, and it was like a kung fu match everywhere. No space lasers at all. But Janeway gets behind.
What do you mean no space lasers? Fucking Tuvok laid everybody out with that wide pattern shot.
You're right. And when the space laser was used, it was used in a way that was really cool.
Yeah. So you got this real limp-wristed firefight out in, some state park in California. And eventually, Janeway, I think, flanks him, comes up behind him, and there's this, oh, you're human too. And then space BDSM dudes take their GIMP masks off, and you see that it's human people. And they call a ceasefire, and everybody goes back to Voyager.
Correct. One interesting note about these humans that see, like, one of the few things that was interesting about them was that their last names are cities. The two that you meet, one's Evansville and one's Berlin, and it makes sense that their last names are probably based on the places that the original abductees were from.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame we don't get to fucking know anything else about these fucking people. Because what follows is an explanation that these humans were all descendants from this group of humans that were abducted from Earth in the 1930s, brought to this planet to be slaves, and eventually America'd all over the place and kicked them out and took their guns and decided to start their own civilization with blackjack and hookers. All right? This Evansville guy explains all this. And now there's 100,000 humans that live on this planet, and they have 3 cities, and shit's great.
They are the cat's meow. They got everybody back on the ship. At this point, the people who had been in the frozen food section now believe Janeway, and they're all kind of in awe of the situation and what's happening. You've brought the human refugees back. You find out that this human colony that has kind of blossomed out of slavery thought that everybody in the frozen food section was dead and was treating it as a sacred shrine, that they hadn't even been in there themselves for a couple generations. So their, socks are knocked off that these guys are alive and well. They revere them almost as not gods, but, they're
artifacts of the past. Yeah.
They're, memorials essentially. What struck me at this point is that nobody in the frozen food section seems to really give a shit about the fact that every single person they know is dead. And whereas in the neutral zone, you had these 4 people rolling out of cryo, and they struggle with it. And I get, you don't want to retread old ground or whatever, but nobody cares at all that they're in such a radically fucked up situation that everybody that they had grown up with is dead, that they'll probably never see, their home again. Everybody's just kind of living in the moment, no shits to give.
Immediately, everybody is completely okay with being on this planet. They spend so little time with what we'll call them the 37s, like they do in the episode. They spend so little time with them after the wake up scene that it's just, okay, they're here. Okay, they decide to stay. Okay, the episode's over.
Well, so what happens is this dude, this Evansville guy who was previously our BDSM alien, he walks him through. The alien race is called the Briori, and this is like the only time you ever hear about them in any Trek at all. And as best I can tell, the Briori are what, gray aliens who do the traditional UFO abductions?
Who knows? We'll never see them.
And I'll bitch about this a little bit later, but what, you're gonna fly all the way to the Alpha Quadrant, kidnap people off of Earth, despite the cornucopia of races you could have enslaved in the Delta Quadrant, and then fly? You got this amazing technology. You can jump quadrants, but you can't keep a couple. And it's 300's the magic number we're looking here for, guys. There were 300 people who were abducted, minus what? There were 12? How many people were in the frozen food section?
There
8
were
at the most?
8, yeah.
So you got 300 minus 8 people. They overthrow the Briori. They destroy the ship that has super baller warp drive. And they colonize the shit out of this L-class planet to the point where it's so impressive that when they take the Voyager crew on a tour through there and roll out the red carpet, and this is something I'm actually going to talk about, or by the time the people at home are going to hear this, would have already talked about in our special thing. You know, as Voyager encounters, whether it's this planet or the Skeevian paradise, you know, what happens when a crew member is like, you know what, fuck it, I don't want to be out in the danger zone anymore. This place is good enough. I didn't have any friends or family back in the Alpha Quadrant, and this is just as good as, you know, dying in the vacuum of space. I want to stay here. So I'm kind of glad that they addressed this topic a little bit. I would say that's the biggest takeaway from this episode for me, is what happens when your crew is offered something better than what they have potentially. What does Janeway end up doing? But yeah, man, they tout about how great these 3 colonies are. It's so impressive. And it's the biggest cop-out out of any sci-fi show I've ever seen. Where it's just like, they jump forward like, wow, wasn't that amazing? Yeah, oh, God. You don't even get like a matte painting of like the colony. It's just...
Yeah, they just do a voiceover. They do a voiceover explanation with Janeway's captain log to be like, it was the best thing ever, and now it is so difficult to know if to stay.
Captain's log, stardate 48975.1. Evansville wasn't exaggerating when he said they have a lot to be proud of here. It was an amazing experience, but it's left me a little disturbed.
This episode is so confused of what the fuck it's supposed to be about. Is it this cracky fan fiction about finding fucking Amelia Earhart in space that's just cheese? Or is it supposed to be an episode about finding this outpost of humans and having a serious discussion about whether to stay or not? Because for the rest of the episode, we're suddenly on this B track, right? We're on this B track now. And suddenly you've got to hurry up and have a bunch of characters seriously consider wanting to stay on this planet for no reason that we can detect, because they don't even bother to show us, the viewer, why. They just tell us. It seems so unearned and stupid. As soon as we were done, my wife was like, you know, let me rewrite this episode real quick. How about instead of all this Amelia Earhart shit, they find the rust trail and they find the truck and it leads them to the planet, and they get to the planet, and the planet is these humans, and they've built these cities, and it's utopian, and everyone's getting along, and it's really cool. And the episode is just all about them encountering these people and having to seriously contemplate the idea that they could stop here and be part of this human civilization in this part of the galaxy rather than continuing their long trek home. That was the entire that could be the entire focus of the episode, and you go through characters coming to the conclusion that they want to go home and their interactions with people, and you have a love interest or something with all that. Like, that would have been good.
I'm gonna do you one better. Not only do some of the crew stay, like the Maquis, who are just looking at jail sentences when they get home, but some of these people who have been on the colony and who have a thirst for adventure and wanting to see a world beyond, you pick up some new crew members off this thing. You diversify your roster. Maybe you replenish some lost people that could have died earlier in the season, and you've got a really diverse, cool, alternative Earth history, filling in some of these lieutenant and other, tertiary character things. You could have picked up some really cool people off this planet.
Mwah, I love it. Both of those are good.
But instead, you got Amelia Earhart, who repeatedly is hailed as essentially the avatar of adventure and exploration and the spirit of travel, who has just woken up out of this cryosleep, who is about to embark on this massive, apparently CIA OSS spy mission on Japan with her ever trusty Tackleberry. She wakes up in the frozen food section as like, well, you're not on Earth anymore, and look at all this other cool adventure that you might go on, including flying on a fucking spaceship and getting home. And of all people, she's like, you know what? I think I just want to poke around here on this Earth 2 colony.
I want you to keep in mind that everything you said is correct. Like, that makes no sense whatsoever. But the worst part is they juxtapose a scene where all the 3 other Kroger frozen food section people are like, yeah, we're gonna stay, no problem, this is the best, and Amelia Earhart's still weighing if that's what she wants to do or not, right? That's scene A. And then the next scene is her telling Janeway, yeah, we're gonna stay, these people are part of me. And it's this long dialogue about how, oh yeah, these people are awesome, they built this awesome thing, and all this is so right for you to stay and all this. Like, it's one, like, I'm not sure, I think I kind of want to explore space, that would be cool. And then immediately after that, a bunch of shit we never see, never understand, never gets shown to the audience whatsoever is the reason why she wants to stay on the planet. And Janeway's like, yeah, that's totally the right idea. It's just rushed and stupid and dumb in the sloppiest and laziest way possible.
Yeah. It's terrible corner cutting. You've been better off in like, look, either we can talk about how sweet these cities are that we're not going to show you, and just it'll be in running gag for the rest of this episode, or maybe some crew members, like they could have had like some more mess hall scene where Amelia Earhart and these other fish stick people are talking to the crew members, are like, yeah, and then Janeway did this stupid thing, and then Janeway did that stupid thing, and then Janeway did this stupid thing, and Amelia Earhart in her Halloween costume just kind of like, whoa, this broad is like bad news. Like, guys, we don't want anything to do with this. Like, I fly dangerous stuff for a living, and I can tell you right now, we don't want to be anywhere near this Janeway lady. Like, she is bad for business. We need to just fucking stay here and not have anything to do with these brainwashed Starfleet people. All they would have to do to really show you how great these cities are was just go to your local mall and get another sweet escalator shot in there. Throw some Ocampa in the background, like when they show off Kef's ears, like, no, look, she's an alien. We're telling you the truth. We really are from the future. All this other stuff. She could have like pulled it back and be like, oh no, those are just Ocampa. They're all in that shopping mall up over the hill. They never really answer why that truck was in space, which is what really led this whole Rube Goldberg of an episode to take place. Like, why did
they never do.
Why did the Briori just dump this fucking truck in space? They kept her plane, but they dumped the truck. Something that the Imperial Asian officer said caught my ear, and that was, like, his whole reason for wanting to stay is like, there's Japanese people here, so I'm going to stay here. Like, how could there be Japanese people in this colony? You've got how many 100,000 people?
100,000 is what they say. So not a lot, really, for 3 cities.
300 people minus the 8 that were in the frozen food section. This actually set me down a pretty big research path about, and this is, of course, like 1:30 a.m. by the time I finally pull my head out of this. Your minimum viable population, if you're going to go out and colonize a world, my question is, what is the minimum number of people that you need to have to avoid inbreeding to the point where you're going to wipe your population out? They got 300 people, and I'm going to post this article up in, I don't know, probably on the main Facebook page. I might toss it over onto the the Voyager Please support group. But Popular Mechanics ran a pretty interesting article about, if humanity was to go out and populate, what's the minimum number of people you'd have to bring? 10,000 is what they name the correct number of people to build a fresh society. You can do less. I think they said you could get away with 500, but the 500 would have had to return to Earth within 6 generations, I want to say, before you start having like massive genetic deficiency issues start cropping up. So the fact that there's only 300 people here, like, you would have to have so much like massive inbreeding going on to keep these cities viable. And in case, to the point where some string of chicken pox comes through and like wipes out 100% of the population because nobody's got an immunity to it. Like, I feel like they just took a bunch of stuff that they thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if, wrote it on a piece of paper, threw it all in a hat, and then like dragged it out and just built this smorgasbord of horse shit episode with the potential for some really cool stuff. Like, like Stevie said, if this was just an episode about, hey, here's a really attractive option to not going further on the Star Trek, do you take it or do you leave it? They could have had some hotness on their hands, and that would have been a cool way, I think, to end the last episode. Again, this was supposed to be the season finale for season 1. This big breakthrough moment of, one of the scenes towards the end is Chakotay and Janeway walking down the hall. She had said that any of the crew members who wanted to stay on the planet would be free to do so. Just meet us in the cargo bay at 1500 hours and we'll, offboard you. And there's a suspense as they're in front of the doors waiting for them to open, seeing who's going to jump ship. And they open up, and of course, the room is completely empty.
I mean, it's just so like everything else is it's unearned. Like, okay, I want to address some of the stuff you brought up before we finish the episode. I actually was thinking the same thing that you were about the amount of people that survived, because I think it was a big plot point, at least at one point in Battlestar Galactica, trying to make sure like enough people survive to make people in the future.
Yes.
I know it's something Baltar brings up or something like that. So I had that in my mind, like 300 doesn't feel like enough. And that Japanese comment did like stick out to me for the same reason it did. But you know what? Whatever. Obviously, this is so half-assed. It's like quarter-assed. So I almost don't even want to hold that against it, because everything else about this episode is so bad on a fundamental level that one little detail almost seems inconsequential. But granted, I think you're absolutely right. It's not enough people. The premise of them finding humans that were there as a result of like mid-20th century abductions, and that they have this like retro futuristic world that they've built as a consequence. Like they had all this alien technology that they got from the aliens they deposed, and they've built like this like 1950s version of the future. And this is it's very reminiscent of home, but very different. And this is what Voyager encounters and has to consider, like, hey, maybe we could like stay here and like be part of this because it's like home, even if it's very different. Once Stevie put that thought in my head, I was like, man, that is such a good idea. How is it that we two schmoes on our fucking couch watching this episode immediately came up with a far better idea than these guys? I just can't get my mind around how these dudes were so blind to how bad their show was. Because like you said from the start, they thought this was good. They thought they fucking nailed it. And nothing could be further from the truth. It's all just so patchy and sloppy and stupid and rushed, and really the only things that comes close to providing any genuine entertainment or saving it is a couple scenes early on where your guest actress that's playing Amelia Earhart tries. That's it. Like, that's the only good thing I can say about it. Oh, and you land the ship,
and they had Tackleberry.
Oh yeah, and you got yourself some Tackleberry, added bonus.
I'm telling you, man, go through and read the memory alpha on this thing. Like, everybody in the executive production staff on this just sucks this thing's dick full force, except for Michael Pillar's like, basically like, yeah, this is a stupid episode and trash. Like, he got a ton of brownie points. What I don't understand is, like, again, Brian Branagh or whatever his name is, the dude who like co-wrote All Good Things wrote this episode. Like, how, and loved this episode. Like, how do you do so good and then create
Ron Moore, dude? Ron Moore. When people forget that Ron Moore was hard in the paint on the best of TNG. He was the primary force behind why DS9 was good, and he's not anywhere near the show. He ends up like doing 2 episodes. Like,
gets in a fight. I think it said something about like he had a real aversion to the culture in the writers' room, and rightfully so, man. I don't think anybody with self-respect could have walked into half of these episode planning meetings and been like, yes, I feel good about telling you that you're doing the right thing in here. This is the worst episode of Star Trek I think I've seen.
It's not the worst. I still think the Candy Corn Tragedy was the worst out of Voyager. This is second worst, but the Candy Corn Tragedy episode was so boring and stupid that I lost total interest. This was so baffling. I remembered it strongly before I rewatched it, and I was invested in watching it because of how ridiculously weird it was. So for that reason alone, I will say it's better than Ex Post Facto, aka the Candy Corn Tragedy.
This episode had the integrity, the story integrity, and the cohesion of a Disney coloring book.
I think that's an insult to Disney, coloring books everywhere.
Yeah. Less plot holes.
But yeah, it ends with, oh look, they're all staying. Like, were you supposed to think that someone wasn't? Like this plot point that came in the last 12 minutes, whatever. Who fucking cares? Let's move on. So that's that.
All right.
That's the 37s.
Let me see where I'm going to steer us from here. Episodes. All right, Joe. Up next, Season 2, Episode 2, Initiations. Chakotay is captured by a young Kmart Klingon who is undergoing his manhood ritual.
Yeah, we get a lot of tasty Kazon backstory, if that's what you were in the market for, and we actually get another like guest star, familiar Star Trek guest star on that one.
Is it going to be Mahoney from Police Academy? Or
It is not.
Is it going to be the guy who can make all the noises with his mouth?
It's Aaron Einberg, who plays Nog on DS9. Yeah, I know, you're super excited.
Well, it can't be any worse than this goddamn thing. I'll be interested to see, like, they're not going to do uniform updates and stuff on this show, so there's not really you don't have Starfleet retrofits of the ship. Like, things really can't change that much between these seasons. I'll be interested to see where the polish comes in, if it does come in at all. On
that note, my friend, belated happy birthday. I'm glad my gift to you was so painful. And
the worst episode I've seen on my goddamn birthday of all days.
I
almost don't want to give this thing a rule of acquisition. That's how much I hated this fucking thing.
It's not worth it. Don't waste it.
Well, I got one anyways. Rule of acquisition number 75. Home is where the heart is, but the stars are made of latinum.
I mean, that's
I take
a
that
good
back.
one.
Yeah, it is a good one, but I might have to take it back anyways. Gosh. All right. Well, I'll see you on episode 2.
Yeah, man. Once again, thank you to everybody for listening to Voyager. Please share the podcast, rate the podcast, tell us what you think. Join our Facebook group.
Throw us. We're not begging you guys out there for give us money or Patreon or any of that other stuff, but we see the membership growing. It feels good. It motivates us to keep going forward. We deeply appreciate anybody who's taken the time out to leave us a review on iTunes. That seems like a great place to harvest people. Joe's continually fighting the good fight, throwing his life away, going onto Reddit and picking fights there.
I gotta try, man. Like Peter alluded to, fortunately we have real jobs, so we definitely are doing this to entertain and entertain alone. The only thing we ask, tell people about us. We get excited about entertaining more and more people, and as we watch the numbers tick up, that really gets us wanting to do more and get more adventurous and that sort of thing. So if you have the time and the inclination, let people know about the show. That's the biggest and best thing you can do for us. We do appreciate it. On that note, I am Joseph.
I'm Peter.
And this has been Voyager, Please, a hateful voyage through the Delta Quadrant. We will see you next week. Peace!